Incredible moment, billionaire's daughter witnesses, surprising sign, language connection in Café. Sarah Thompson sank deeper into her plush booth, her fingers flicking through a series of sparkling images on her phone. The Café buzzed around her, laughter, clinking cups, snippets of conversations filled with life and emotion. Yet she felt utterly alone. As the rain pattered against the window, she couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of emptiness that clung to her like a damp fog. The filtered perfect moments displayed in her social feed mocked her. They were an elaborate facade that seemed to promise happiness, yet left her feeling hollow. She took a deep breath, pushing aside the surreal reality of being the daughter of a billionaire tech mogul. What was it all worth if it didn't fill that empty void? Then she noticed the couple at the next table, their hands dancing through the air, animated and vibrant. They weren't speaking the language of her high society world, but rather a beautiful form of communication she had never considered before: sign language. Their laughter ripped through the veil of her isolation, a direct link to something real and authentic. She watched as they exchanged glances filled with pure joy, and for the first time that day, her heart flickered to life, ignited by the raw connection that radiated from them. It sparked a question in her mind. Could she bridge the disconnect so pervasive in her life? Was it possible to shatter the glass box of privilege and isolation her family had crafted around her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determined, she resolved to learn sign language, diving headfirst into the vibrant community of deaf artists and educators. Each lesson unveiled hidden truths about herself and her family, awakening emotions she'd long buried. A dusty family album from her childhood glared at her, revealing a photograph of her grandfather, a humble schoolteacher who dedicated his life to teaching deaf children. The juxtaposition of her grandfather's legacy against her family's empire ignited a fire within Sarah, one that fueled her desire to honor his memory while grasping for a purpose beyond luxury and unmeaningful accolades. But as she nurtured friendships within this newfound world, she wrestled with fear and doubt. She began preparing for a public speaking event, advocating for accessibility in education, troubling emotions churning in her gut. What would her family think? She knew her father would be disappointed, but as the day approached, the thought of betraying his legacy felt more like shedding a suffocating cloak rather than a betrayal. She saw him just as she feared. During a gala filled with laughter, shimmery dresses, and polished smiles, he cornered her. Disappointment laced his voice, tightening her heart in a vice grip. "Sarah, is this really what you want? This cause? It's beneath our family name," he accused, his words crashing down like thunder. "I'm not rejecting you. I just want to embrace everyone," she blurted, her voice quivering. The cacophony of laughter faded into the background as silence hovered in the air. Her conviction was like a stark contrast to the world they inhabited. Would he truly understand the transformation that was taking place within her? As her father's penetrating gaze bore into her, uncertainty gripped her soul. Here, poised on the precipice of her identity, Sarah felt the tension reach a harrowing peak. Her entire world was about to shift. But to what end? The Café continued its vibrant dance, oblivious to the storm igniting within her, leaving her breathless and uncertain of the path ahead. The gala's lights twinkled like stars, creating a contrast far too bright against the darkness encasing Sarah's thoughts. She felt exposed in her silk gown, each shimmering detail mocking her internal struggle. The laughter around her buzzed like static, engulfing her in a discomfort she could no longer ignore. Each moment spent in her father's presence weighed heavily, tugging her between his high expectations and her burgeoning conviction. "Is it so wrong to want to connect with people?" she pondered, glancing at the mingling guests. She thought of the vivid conversations she had participated in over the past weeks with members of the deaf community, each exchange resonating with authenticity that felt impossible in her previous world. Determined to prove to herself that she was more than just a name, she took a step back from the crowd. In solitude, she closed her eyes and envisioned herself on stage. A sea of faces before her, not all of them aligned with the wealth and privilege that had defined her upbringing. Would they see strength in her vulnerability? Would they connect with her passion? This time, she wouldn't be merely Sarah Thompson, the billionaire's daughter. She would be an advocate. In that quiet corner, her resolve hardened. The fear of disappointing her father was nearly suffocating, but the idea of spending the rest of her life shackled to an identity that didn't reflect her true self felt far worse. She envisioned the faces of the individuals she had come to respect, their rich stories unfolding with the sincerity she had longed for in her own life. They grounded her, igniting a flame of purpose. As she opened her eyes, a wave of clarity swept over her. She would speak at the event, not just to advocate for accessibility, but to share a part of herself, to honor her grandfather's legacy and the humanity he had shown his students. Would she invite betrayal from her father's world? Yes, but this time it wouldn't hold the paralyzing weight of her past. Each moment leading up to the public speaking event was another battle. She practiced tirelessly, her voice shuddering initially, transforming into a steady and confident tone. Friends from her sign language classes rallied around her, their support reminiscent of the couple she had first observed in the cafe, the warmth of this new community fueling her confidence. Yet the conflict intensified as the day approached. The conversation with her father lingered, intensifying her anxiety. Despite the support from her new friends, doubt gnawed at her. Would she stand up there and let her words falter? The pressure continued to build as the hours dwindled. Finally the day arrived, stark and unyielding. The auditorium trembled with eager anticipation. An audience filled with diverse individuals awaited her words. Sarah's heart raced as she stood backstage, her palms clammy against the microphone. She could hear the chatter, a mix of excitement and curiosity, and just beyond it lay the echoes of her father's voice, full of disappointment. "This isn't just about me," she reminded herself, searching for strength in her conviction while grappling with the fear of failure. It was not merely about advocating for others. It was a step toward claiming her identity in defiance of the constraints boxed in by family expectations. With heart pounding, she stepped forward into the spotlight. The room quieted, eyes fixed on her, and for a split second, she froze. In that suspended moment, a rush of clarity surged through her, a revelation breaking against the shore of her uncertainty. She was ready. The moment of truth arrived. Would she find her voice, or would the shadows of her past claim her once more? The silence enveloped Sarah, wrapping around her like a heavy cloak as she stood in the spotlight, scanning the expectant faces before her. They weren't the polished, familiar visages of well-heeled society. They were filled with anticipation, openness, and perhaps an inkling of hope. She could feel the weight of every eye, but it was no longer stifling. It ignited a spark within her. Her palms clenched around the microphone. A steadying breath flooded into her lungs, and she called upon the practice that had nearly consumed her in recent weeks. She had silenced her fears with each rehearsal, substituting self-doubt with determination. It was time to translate that into action. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice initially wavering but quickly gaining strength. "I stand before you not just as Sarah Thompson, a name associated with wealth and privilege, but as someone who has strived to find her voice." She paused, allowing the sincerity to permeate the air. It was a moment of vulnerability, something she had never felt comfortable sharing before now. As she narrated her journey, the warmth of empowerment flowed through her veins. Each word uttered was not just a representation of her struggles. They were threads connecting her to those who had inspired her, the friends from her sign language classes, the individuals she encountered who lived lives informed by resilience. Including them in her narrative gave her a sense of purpose richer than any fortune. Yet, with every sentence, the specter of her father's disapproval lingered at the edges of her consciousness, taunting her with familiar dismay. "You'll never be taken seriously," he'd told her more than once, dismissing her interests as nothing more than a frivolous phase. But standing on that stage, she could feel the collective energy of acceptance. This was her space. The applause washed over her when she concluded, but within her soared conflicting emotions. Pride knotted with trepidation. Her thoughts poured into the speech, her authentic self poured into it. When she exited the stage, the applause still echoing in her ears, the atmosphere felt electric. She lingered near the backstage door, searching for a sign that she hadn't disappointed the guests and, more crucially, herself. The warmth of validation blossomed when she saw familiar faces approaching her. A cluster of friends from her sign language classes, their expressions radiant. Sarah. The voice was soft yet firm, cutting through the exhilaration clouding her mind. It was Amit, one of her closest allies. That was incredible. Your passion shone through every word. But just as quickly as the thrill of camaraderie enveloped her, another presence crept forward. Her father's imposing silhouette filled the entrance behind them, casting a shadow that eclipsed the light of the moment. His eyes scanned the gathering crowd before landing squarely on her, the unreadable expression on his face making her insides churn. "It seems you've decided to perform," he stated coolly, the words hitting like blades. "Dad, She attempted to defend her choice, but he simply raised a hand, silencing her. "Did you think this would impress anyone? These people?" His voice dripped disdain, a reflex she had long known. In that instant, the intoxicating rush of success dimmed, replaced by a cloying sense of obligation. A performance. Was that all it would ever be in his eyes? Would she ever escape the shackles of his perception? But the juxtaposition of the warmth she felt from her friends and the chill of her father's disapproval ignited an inner storm. How could she assert her identity when the very person from whom she sought validation threatened to dismiss it? With her heart racing, she faced him, fists clenching. "This isn't about you or your legacy, Dad. It's about finding strength in others and accepting myself." Sarah stood at a precipice, a thrilling breadth of potential ahead of her. The road to true self-acceptance lay tangled with conflict, but she had made a choice. Then came a revelation driven by necessity. This confrontation had to happen. As she prepared for the battle that lay ahead, she felt an ember of determination spark between her ribs. The time had come to face not just my father, but the limitations of my previous self. What remained unclear was not just how she would navigate this moment, but what other aspects of her identity were waiting to be claimed. With resolve tightening around her, she realized she wouldn't back down, not now. Where would this confrontation lead? Would she reclaim her narrative without losing herself? The tension gripped her as she stepped closer, ready for whatever came next. "Your desire for acceptance is misguided," her father retorted, the disdain in his voice lacing each word like a venomous whisper. The coldness of his tone bore into her, threatening to extinguish the burgeoning fire inside her. Sarah clenched her jaw, holding her ground. "I've spent my life trying to fit into your narrative, but I won't do it anymore," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremors of uncertainty that flooded her. Confrontation coursed through her veins, mingling with the lingering adrenaline from her earlier performance. This moment wasn't just about her father. It was about taking ownership of her own life. She had rehearsed this conversation countless times in her head, exiting in various ways, but now it felt different, real. "Do you even understand what you're getting into?" he continued, eyes narrowed, dismissing her statement as if it were a passing whim. "You believe these people care about your struggles? They don't even know you." But she did know them. She had shared laughter and tears with them in her classes, formed connections that transcended her usual social realms. Their acceptance ignited something in her that she hadn't realized was missing all along, genuine connection. "Why can't you just try?" she pressed, the words emerging not as a plea, but as a challenge. "Why can't you acknowledge that success isn't just about money, but about relationships and personal growth?" He blinked, momentarily taken aback by the conviction in her voice. Seeing the glimmer of surprise, Sarah pressed further. "I am not the same girl who cared only about appearances. I am learning to embrace who I really am, and I won't let you define that for me." As she stood there, heart racing, a flicker of defiance ignited within her. This was not just a fleeting confrontation. This was a tangible leap into her own empowered narrative. Tears stung her eyes, not from defeat, but from the catharsis of finally voicing the truth. It was liberating and terrifying at once. "Do you think I care about impressing anyone?" she exclaimed, the weight of her past fraying at the edges of her composure. "This isn't a performance, it's my life. I'm tired of living for your legacy when I don't even know who I am." The disbelief etched on her father's face shifted into something that resembled concern, but it was too late now. The battle lines had been drawn, and Sarah had stepped across them. As she held his gaze, she could see the storm of emotion within him, but hers was one not of dependency. It was about liberation. In that charged moment, Sarah recognized the absence of her own voice over the years. It was not merely about what her father wanted for her, it was about what she wanted for herself, free from the shackles of his powerful expectations. Feeling the intensity of her newfound awareness, she took a deep breath. The air around her felt charged with the possibilities that lay unobstructed before her. What if this moment served as the turning point she had been searching for? "Every day, I'm choosing to be better, to understand myself and what I can offer the world," she asserted, each word imbued with purpose. "I won't stop growing or learning, and I won't stop seeking my own truth." As silence hung between them, she pierced his facade of indifference with her unwavering gaze. It was a standoff, each grappling not just for control, but to redefine their roles in the relationship. But this was only the beginning. She felt an urgency pulsing beneath her skin. The world outside, with all its untapped experiences, beckoned her. Her heart raced with the awareness that her father was not the only source of conflict. She had internal battles to confront as well. Would stepping into her identity require sacrificing other facets of her life? Could she forge ahead into the unknown while grappling with the remnants of her past? In that suspended moment, a new question rose in the depths of her heart. What would she need to confront within herself to embrace the life she envisioned? With that thought swirling in her mind, she began to walk away from the confrontation, a decision crystallizing within her. Sensing the weight of a new path ahead, she took a deep breath, feeling ready to embrace the challenges that awaited her. Where would her journey lead now? She had faced her father, but what awaited in her quest for authenticity? It was time to unearth not just her continuous growth, but the hidden potential buried deep within. The ache of the confrontation lingered as Sarah stepped into the bustling street, her heart a blend of exhilaration and trepidation. Each step felt heavy with the weight of choices made and the uncertainty of those yet to come. The sunlight splashed against her face, a hot reminder of the world she was stepping into, one that held potential but also demanded courage. As she walked, the sounds of city life pulsed around her. The chaotic symphony of honking horns, distant laughter, and pedestrians chatting filled her ears, merging into a soundtrack of vibrant possibilities. Yet, despite the brightness of the day, a cloud of doubt hovered nearby. What did it truly mean to embrace her identity? Question after question loomed in her mind like towering skyscrapers, their shadows stretching over her resolve. She paused at the corner of a busy cafe, watching groups of people exchanging stories, holding tight to cups of coffee and to one another. Something stirred inside her, an urge to connect, to reach out, to find her place among them. The genuine laughter and animated discussions ignited a flicker of longing, a desire to be part of something real, something authentic. With a sharp intake of breath, Sarah pushed the door open and entered. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee embraced her, and the bustling warmth of conversation washed over her senses. As she scanned the room, her gaze landed on a table in the corner where a young woman was animatedly signing to her friends. Intrigued, Sarah moved closer, drawn in by the vibrant energy of their interaction. She had always admired the fluidity of sign language, a visual expression that transcended spoken word. It seemed like a dance, each gesture carrying emotion and meaning. For a moment she stood mesmerized, observing the ease with which they communicated. They seemed free from judgment, a stark contrast to her own interactions. Suddenly, a swell of determination surged within her. This was her opportunity, to connect, to learn, to embody the authenticity she so bravely claimed to seek. In a moment of vulnerability, she approached their table, her voice steady, yet tinged with uncertainty. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I've always been fascinated by sign language. Would you be willing to teach me?" The young woman looked up, surprise flickering across her features before a warm smile broke through. "Of course. I'm Lily. It's great to meet you. Please, sit down." As they began to share simple signs and phrases, Sarah felt herself loosening, her inhibitions melting away in the exchange. Here, in this tiny cafe, she was stepping closer to her truth, moving beyond the confines of her father's expectations. Each sign she learned represented a piece of herself, reclaiming parts she thought were lost in parental shadows. Soon, they were laughing together, exchanging stories about aspirations and struggles. In this connection, Sarah found something profound. She was no longer just a daughter striving to earn approval. She was a person capable of initiating her own narrative. But the journey was far from over. As they wrapped up their tentative lesson, an unsettling thought crept back into her mind. Would indulging in these new experiences dilute her sense of loyalty to her family? There remained a nagging question as she bit her lip, the dilemma of tradition versus self-exploration intensifying. "I really enjoyed this, Lily," she said, the tension rising in her chest. "But I'm still figuring out how to balance my new interests with my family's expectations." Lily nodded knowingly, her expression a mirror to Sarah's turmoil. "It's not easy to forge your own path. Sometimes you might feel like you're losing something, but perhaps you're gaining something greater, a sense of self." Sarah left the cafe invigorated but entangled in deeper reflection. The lessons would not solely stem from this interaction. They would force her to confront the collision of her new desire for authenticity and the lingering ties of expectation that bound her. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on her shoulders as she stepped back into the bustling world outside, heart racing with the promise of new connections and the pressure of old obligations. What would happen when she returned home? Would her father understand her newfound passion? Or would she have to stand tall against his disapproval once more? As the sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of yet another day, Sarah resolved to confront the shadows of her past, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. Would she dare to embrace her freedom, or would she risk losing herself in the process? The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of her father's voice echoing through the house, filled with urgency and purpose. Each word rolled through the hallways, weaving a tapestry of expectations that felt more suffocating than ever. As she lingered in bed, she felt the familiar tug of war in her chest, the desire to step into the light of authenticity and the relentless pull of familial duty. The decision to meet Lily again loomed in her mind like an undiscovered path through the forest, inviting yet daunting. What if her father noticed the changes, questioned her new pursuits? Would he perceive them as frivolous distractions from the life he envisioned for her? Attempting to quiet the internal storm, she forced herself to rise. Clarity had to be her ally today. She dressed carefully, the fabric brushing against her skin, igniting a reminder of who she was trying to become. After savoring a quick breakfast, she gathered the resolve that flickered within her. It was time to embody the determination she had felt in the cafe, face the world anew, and extend her hand for connection, one meaningful expression at a time. As she approached the cafe, the familiar sight of Lily signing with her friends danced before her eyes, their laughter bursting like bubbles in the air. The energy was magnetic. It beckoned her forward, yet Sarah felt a pivot of trepidation. What if she was met with disapproval from not only her father but also her peers? Was this pursuit truly worth the potential distance it could create? She hesitated outside for a moment longer, drawing strength from the sunlight warming her face. "This is for you," she whispered to herself, pushing through the door. In an instant, the world of possibility enveloped her as she stepped inside. "Sarah, you made it!" Lily greeted her with genuine delight, pulling her into the warmth of their circle. As the group resumed their lively conversation, Sarah took a seat, attempting to quiet the anxiety that knotted in her stomach. Each sign exchanged flowed with ease, yet with every new lesson, thoughts of her father's expectations darkened the edges of her mind. Midway through a lesson on emotional expressions in sign language, a sudden revelation struck her. She was good at this. The logic and flow felt natural, the complex emotions transformed into a beautifully visual form. The exhilaration of learning began to outweigh her insecurities. If she could navigate this world, Perhaps she could also articulate her journey to her father. "Lily," she said, interjecting her thoughts, once she felt the space was appropriate. "Have you ever had to explain your passion to someone who didn't understand?" Lily paused, her fingers still. "Absolutely. It can be challenging. You want them to see the beauty you do, but sometimes you're faced with resistance. You have to choose to assert your voice, regardless of the noise." Those words struck a profound chord. Sarah reflected on her own desires, the connection between her heart and her family nagging at her conscience. Would she allow the unyielding weight of tradition to snuff out this burgeoning passion? Feeling emboldened, she resolved to confront her father later that day. Igniting the spark of authenticity was crucial, but so was opening a dialogue with the man who shaped so much of her past. She envisioned a conversation rooted not in rejection, but in understanding. As Sarah parted ways with Lily, a sense of liberation filled her. Yet, alongside the thrill of newfound resolve came a piercing worry. Would her father honor her growth? Or would their relationship descend into conflict, the tightrope she walked unraveling beneath her? The sun dipped lower in the sky, sinking down as she approached home. Each step resonated with the possibility of transformation, but the heaviness of her father's potential disapproval weighed heavily on her heart. Would she find the strength to bridge the growing gap between her desire for independence and her sense of loyalty? That evening, standing before her father, she wondered what words would be enough to communicate the depth of her experience, the urgency of her truth. Would it be the moment she stood tall for herself, or the moment that shook the very foundation of their relationship? The stakes were higher than ever, and the moment of truth loomed just ahead. Would Sarah be ready to embrace whatever came next? Sarah stood in the dimly lit living room, her heart pounding in her chest as she wrestled with the stark silence that enveloped her and her father. The air crackled with tension, the unspoken words hanging heavy between them. She had rehearsed a million variations of this moment in her mind, but none prepared her for the reality of confronting him while feeling so unsteady. "Can we talk?" she finally managed, her voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. Her father, a man of strong convictions and strict expectations, turned slowly from the window where he had been gazing out at the twilight. There was an inscrutable look in his eyes, one that made her stomach twist. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" The question hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation. She could choose to be forthright or retreat into the safety of silence, her preferred method of avoiding conflict. Yet the significance of the day pressed on her like a weight, propelling her forward. "I've been learning sign language," she said, the words escaping her lips before she could catch them. They sounded strange, almost foreign, yet she pressed on. "It's important to me. There's a whole world out there that I want to connect with, and it feels liberating." A flicker of surprise darted across her father's face, quickly replaced by a stoic mask. "And how long is this going to go on, Sarah? You're pursuing a hobby, not a career. You know what your future should look like." His words were sharp, and they struck a nerve, igniting a raging storm of emotions within her. It was the age-old struggle, her desires versus his expectations. The weight of familial duty collided violently with her burgeoning identity. She felt years of suppressed frustrations rising to the surface. "This isn't just a hobby, it's a passion. I want to share my life with people who communicate differently, whose voices I'd like to hear." "And what about the life I've envisioned for you?" he rebutted, his voice rising slightly. "You have responsibilities, goals. You're meant to follow a path, and this is just a distraction. Isn't that what you want for me? To follow a path?" Her voice cracked slightly as she fought back the tide of tears that threatened to spill over. "I'm not trying to dismiss what you've planned for me. I just want to choose my path too. Can't you see that?" The moment hung in the contours of silence, a ferocious battle between love and disappointment coursing through their exchange. He looked like he was about to respond, but paused. Perhaps he was processing her question, wrestling with this unexpected rebellion from the daughter he thought he knew. "Why can't you see the bigger picture, Sarah?" The frustration in his voice stung. A sense of urgency pulsed in her veins, igniting a determination she hadn't felt until that moment. "Because I'm still trying to define what that picture is. You may have painted your version, but I want to think beyond that. Explore new horizons. His gaze hardened, reflecting years of unbending tradition. And what if that path leads to uncertainty, to disappointment? She took a deep breath, the resolve swelling within her. Isn't it the uncertainty, Dad, that makes life vibrant? I want to discover who I am beyond your designs. I need to find that out for myself. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah could see the conflict brewing in his expression. In that pivotal moment, she realized that she was not just speaking for herself. She was also attempting to shatter the chains of expectation that had long held him captive. There was strength in her conviction, an empowering realization that maybe her growth could indeed coexist with his vision, if only they dared to reshape it together. The silence that followed felt profound, as if they were both teetering on the edge of a transformative precipice. Would he make the leap with her, or would she have to forge her own path alone? In wedging open that door, she could feel the rift between them both closing slightly. But was it enough? Would she lose her father in the name of her own authenticity? Just as uncertainty began to grip her heart, the tremor in his voice interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah," he began, but the words remained unformed, suspended in the air. Was he finally beginning to understand? Or was this just the calm before a storm of resistance? The moment stretched endlessly, dangling between hope and despair, as they stood on the precipice of something new. Would she find the strength to forge ahead into the unknown? Or could she expect a turnaround toward union? The fate of their relationship was hanging in a delicate balance, and Sarah realized the next words spoken might very well define everything that followed. With his unfinished thought hanging in the air, Sarah felt the weight of expectation shift between them. It was a fragile moment, teetering on the brink of revelation or further division. She held her breath, her heart racing, both terrified and exhilarated by the possibility of vulnerability. "Dad, I know this isn't easy for you," she said, leaning forward slightly. "But I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. If I don't take this leap, I might never truly soar." He shook his head slowly, his brow furrowed in concentration, a storm of conflicting emotions brewing beneath his stern demeanor. "I'm afraid, Sarah. Afraid of where this path might lead you," he finally admitted, his voice heavy with concern, a glimmer of the father she had always known. "That fear can't be a barrier," she pleaded, grounding herself in her newfound resolve. "This is my life, and I need to make decisions for myself, even if that means risking disappointment." The word disappointment hung like a specter between them, an echo of past grievances and unmet expectations. She could see the struggle in his eyes, a father who wanted to protect his daughter but feared the very act of her independence. As they stood in the quiet tension of the room, the shadows of their past loomed large. Each moment of silence felt like a lost opportunity for connection, but amidst the uncertainty, a thought struck her with surprising clarity. She needed to show him rather than just tell him. "I want to take you with me, Dad. Let's go to a cafe where they host sign language meetups," she suggested, her voice firm with determination. "You can see the joy it brings to people when they communicate this way. You'll understand why I'm so passionate about it." For the first time, a flicker of curiosity sparked in his eyes. "You want me to engage with this world you're stepping into?" "Yes. I want us to connect, to bridge the gap that's formed between us. Please, let me share this part of my life with you. Come and see how it feels to be included instead of standing on the outside looking in." He weighed her offer carefully, like a seasoned chess player analyzing his next move. "What if I put myself in situations I'm uncomfortable with? What if I fail to understand?" "Then we'll learn together," Sarah said, her voice infused with warmth. "No one expects perfection. It's about opening our hearts to new experiences. That's how we grow." Her words resonated within the confines of their stifling room, and she could feel a shift in the atmosphere. He seemed to grapple with the invitation, the prospect of vulnerability and surrender. The silence stretched again, but in a heavier, more meaningful way, like they were at the cusp of something transformative. "All right," he said quietly, a hint of resignation mingled with acceptance. "I'll come, but I'm not promising to like it." A smile unconsciously stretched across Sarah's face, a surge of hope filling the space. "That's all I ask. Just come with an open mind." As her father nodded, albeit hesitantly, the air suddenly felt lighter, like the fog finally lifting after a long storm. In that moment, she realized she was not just forging her path, she was also offering her father a chance to step away from the shackles of expectation and tradition. It was a small, yet profound beginning. Later that evening, as Sarah began to imagine their future outing, she felt a familiar set of doubts simmer beneath her excitement. Would her father truly allow himself to connect with this world? Would he understand the beauty she found in it? Or would he still view it as a mere distraction? That night, Sarah found herself restless, yet invigorated. She sat cross-legged on her bed, flipping through a sign language textbook, determination coursing through her veins. She needed to prepare, not just her own skills, but emotionally for what was to come. What if navigating this new chapter meant facing hidden truths about both her father and herself? The prospect excited and terrified her, illuminating uncharted paths ahead. Just when she thought the future held endless possibilities, a chilling thought crept in. What if they both discovered something about each other that changed everything? Would they emerge united, or would old fears pull them apart yet again? Sarah closed her eyes, whispering her silent promise. She wouldn't let fear dictate her journey any longer. And as she drifted off to sleep, the question loomed large. What would tomorrow reveal? As the morning sun filtered through her curtains, Sarah felt an unusual blend of anticipation and anxiousness. Today, everything felt significant. The conversation with her dad lingered in her mind like a charged atmosphere before a storm. There was an opportunity ahead, a chance to change their relationship dynamics. She spent the morning meticulously preparing for their cafe visit. She practiced the basics of sign language with a sense of purpose, not just for her sake, but for her father's too. Each gesture was a message, a bridge to understanding. A tantalizing notion unfolded in her mind. What if this day turned out to be more transformative than she'd imagined? Perhaps her father would not merely observe but genuinely engage. Driving to the cafe, she battled skepticism, replaying her father's words. His hesitations coiled tightly within her. What would he think of the sign language community? Would his willingness to step outside of his comfort zone bring a breakthrough, or further entrench their differences? She knew they were at a pivotal crossroads, one that could result in deep understanding or just amplify the unresolved tensions already simmering. As they arrived, she felt the vibrant energy of patrons milling about, laughter and animated conversations peppered with hands in motion. Sarah glanced at her father, who seemed both intrigued and apprehensive. His brow wrinkled as he took in the environment. "This is different," he murmured, almost to himself. "Just wait until you see the connection," she said, invigorated by the warmth of the cafe's atmosphere. "People here share something special." Taking a deep breath, they found an empty table near the corner. A group of signers laughed as they played a word game, their hands flying through the air, each movement animated by passion. Sarah watched her father's eyes flicker, unable to hide the spark of curiosity that began to ignite there. "Are you ready for a lesson?" she asked, her voice softer now, embodying the importance of this moment. "Let's see," he replied hesitantly, crossing his arms. Sarah guided him through some basic signs. His initial clumsiness made her chuckle, a sound that seemed foreign yet welcomed. Yet amidst her laughter, the threads of doubt and frustration from their past tugged at her mind. She couldn't shake the worry that he might revert to his critical self, casting shadows over their shared experience. As they practiced, a lovely woman approached them, eager to join in. With her hands she introduced herself, a flurry of expressions as her name came simply in a fluid sign. Sarah could tell her father was captivated. This was the moment she hungered for, the moment for her father to perceive this world as vibrant, just like his own. "Hello, I'm Sarah," she signed with a smile. Glances exchanged, shifted to her dad as he watched closely, absorbing the interplay between words and gestures. Her father's voice faltered as he introduced himself. I'm new to this." His initial reticence began to fade, overridden by genuine intrigue. They began to converse with the woman, and she leaned into the conversation, flourishing in a mixture of spoken language and sign. The dance of communication unfolded before them, a fusion of worlds. But just as Sarah felt a glimmer of hope, uncertainty darkened her thoughts. A flicker of self-doubt resurfaced. Was her father merely putting on a facade for the sake of the moment? Frustration twisted within her as she grappled with the possibility of his rejection. As the interaction progressed, she recognized something transformative happening. Not just her father's engagement, but her belief in his capacity to evolve too. Perhaps they both stood on the edge of that cliff, paralleled in their quests, tentative yet hopeful. Just then, as her father mimicked the woman's signs, moments exploded with unanticipated depth. With every sign he learned, a veil lifted, revealing once hidden facets of vulnerability, honesty, and connection. But in that moment of discovery, a familiar voice pierced her thoughts, echoing the fear embedded within her. What if? She hesitated, caught in the whirlwind of burgeoning understanding and lingering trepidation. Perhaps they could redefine their relationship today. Or perhaps the conflict within would surface, setting them adrift again. Sarah turned away momentarily, her heart racing. She could feel the metamorphosis underway, but it was not without its challenges. As the laughter and signs swirled around her, she wondered, could vulnerability alone guide them through this transformational encounter? Was she ready to confront her father's true self, both the limiting and liberating? The dialogue of their lives shifted in that moment, and she realized she had much more to learn. Not just about her father's world, but about her own not-so-hidden fears. As she turned back to him, a sense of urgency gripped her. What lay ahead demanded a leap that neither was truly prepared for. Sarah inhaled deeply, her resolve strengthening. In that cafe, surrounded by connection yet tangled within conflict, she recognized the larger truth waiting to unfold. What would their next exchange reveal? Could they break the cycle of misunderstanding? Or would the barriers they had built over the years rise once more? The question haunted her as the thrill of discovery filled the air. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and her father forged a new rhythm in their relationship, one intertwined with trust and vulnerability. Their cafe visits became a weekly ritual, allowing them to navigate sign language together and gradually dismantle the barriers of misunderstanding that had long defined their interactions. Each time they entered that space, a sense of hope filled the air, a tangible promise that they were venturing into uncharted territory. Sarah marveled at the transformation in her father, who began to express genuine interest in the nuances of sign language and the lives of those who identified with it. He would ask about the experiences of people they met and seemed to understand the intricacies that once eluded him. As they laughed and exchanged stories with their new friends, the fear that once dominated their connection softened, replaced by camaraderie and shared growth. However, moments of tension still arose. There were evenings when her father would slip back into the comfort of familiarity, regurgitating expectations that felt suffocating. During one tense exchange about her future, Sarah found herself feeling the familiar prickle of disappointment at the edges of her resolve. "Sarah," he had said one evening as they practiced together, frowning slightly, "this passion of yours, it's admirable, but you'll need to think about how it fits into our family's legacy. We've built something substantial." "I know, Dad," she replied calmly, grounding herself in the lessons she had learned. "But I also need to create my own legacy, one that reflects who I am. Learning sign language is a key part of that for me. It connects me to so many others, and I can't disregard that." His expression softened, yet uncertainty lingered. "But what if this doesn't lead you to a suitable career?" Her heart raced as she poised herself to respond. "What if it leads me to understanding and purpose rather than wealth? My life can be defined by more than financial success. Isn't that a legacy worth honoring too?" In those moments, both pressed against the boundaries of their relationship, opening doors to deep conversations that were often messy, yet necessary. They were learning together how to honor their individual aspirations, transcending the limitations of preconceived notions. A major turning point came on a sunny Saturday when they volunteered together at a local deaf community event. Sarah had arranged for her father to help out at a booth dedicated to teaching sign language basics. The sunlight glistened through the trees as laughter and joy radiated from families participating in games. Walking hand in hand with her father, she felt a sense of empowerment blossoming within her. This was a genuine connection to the world she was crafting. They demonstrated greetings and common phrases, feeling a rush of satisfaction as people stopped to engage with their booth. Sarah watched as her father transformed into a nervous yet eager participant, his earlier hesitations evaporating amid the joyful exchanges. Later, a young girl approached him, sighing earnestly about her favorite colors. The sight of her father, fully engaged and responsive, ignited a swell of pride within Sarah. For the first time, he was not only an observer, he was part of this vibrant community they had come to love. The barriers of formality melted away, and in that setting, he seemed to flourish, eager to absorb and adapt. After the event, as the sun began to set, they strolled down the street together. A comfortable silence enveloped them, and the warmth of shared experience cast light on what had previously felt fractured. "I've never felt this connected to people before," her father admitted, breaking the silence, his tone thoughtful. "It's like learning a whole new language, one where joy comes through in every sign, every gesture." Sarah flashed a genuine smile, watery eyes reflecting her gratitude. "That kind of connection is beautiful, isn't it? Sharing joy, understanding each other beyond words. This is the essence of what I've been yearning for." He looked at her, a mix of pride and contemplation illuminating his eyes. "Perhaps we're both learning to let go of the confines that held us. I see that in you, and it inspires me to see the world differently." In that moment, Sarah experienced a profound shift, a transformation that was woven into the fabric of their relationship. Each encounter had been a stone laid on their path toward understanding, and as they walked side by side, she knew they would continue this journey, not as adversaries, but as allies discovering their individual narratives. That night, Sarah stood before her mirror, appreciating the woman she had become, one who had dared to embrace connection beyond expectations. She reflected on the evolution of her identity, realizing how far she had come from the suffocated daughter only seeking her father's approval. Now, she was carving her path, empowered by the realization that she could simultaneously honor her lineage and chart her destiny. She smiled, feeling solid confidence radiating from within as she took a step closer to the window, looking out at a city alive with possibilities. Yes, her journey was just beginning, and with unwavering resolution, she knew she was ready to explore whatever lay ahead, not just for herself but also for the legacy she wished to create. The windy nights ahead would challenge her, encourage her, and most importantly, empower her to keep striving for authenticity. As she turned away from the window, the glow of self-fulfillment firmly radiating within her, she felt ready to embrace the next chapter. This was more than personal achievement. This was her life. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find hope in their journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this poignant conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.